because of the tilt of the earth, that the length of daylight doesn't increase like evenly every single day, 365 days of the year. Rather, on February 2nd, our Groundhog Day, the light starts to accelerate. And way back when, we turned it into Groundhog Day, but it used to be a sacred day in the pagan calendar. And then the Christians took it over, and I think it's St. Bridget's Day or something. You know, they ascribed a saint. You know which one?
No, St. Bridget.
St. Bridget.
Also Imbolc.
Imbolc is the pagan. Yeah. So anyway, I'm experiencing this, especially in Rochester, every extra minute of sunlight you can get. We appreciate it. We're appreciators. I came across this quotation from the British, he was a journalist and a writer, but also a Catholic apologist, G.K. Chesterton. He said, "The modern world is not evil. In some ways, the modern world is far too good. It is full of wild and wasted virtues. When a religious scheme is shattered, it is not merely the vices that are let loose. The vices are indeed let loose, and they wander and do damage. But the virtues are let loose also, and the virtues wander more wildly, and the virtues do more terrible damage. The modern world is full of the old Christian virtues gone mad. The virtues have gone mad because they have been isolated from each other and are wandering alone. Thus, some scientists care for truth, and their truth is pitiless. Thus, some humanitarians care only for pity, and their pity, I am sorry to say, is often untruthful." A modern psychoanalyst writing about this quote from Chesterton says, "Pity and compassion, formerly Christian virtues, are the virtues that run wild in the modern social liberal's mind. Indeed, one might also almost say that he has become addicted to them, for they are what give meaning and purpose to his life. He is ever on the lookout for new worlds, not to conquer, but to pity. In his mind, pity and compassion require that he adopts without demur the point of view of the person he pities, for otherwise he might upset him. He must not criticize. In short, if need be, he must lie, and he frequently ends up deceiving himself as well as others. And if he has power, he will turn lies into policy." It's a reflection. G.K. Chesterton wrote that in 1908. So that's before the Bolsheviks went through their falderal in Russia, and before the Chinese Revolution and the Cultural Revolution. It points out a very Buddhistic idea that we're kind of uprooted from our true nature. And because even the virtues are coming out of our self-clinging, not coming out of our realization of our own inherent purity and harmony and wisdom. Therefore, even though we have good intentions, they're somehow limited in scope, and therefore they end up creating suffering. This is Buddha's first noble truth, which is a terrible thing if you think about it. Very hard to fully accept it, that all unenlightened existence is dissatisfactory. Includes suffering, yes, but it includes all sorts of other things too. Even that fundamental kind of anxiety that we feel. It's like there's a little tuning fork in our heart that's always vibrating. And even the good things that are happening, there is a little seed of fear in there because we know they're going to end. I saw this amazing story about some guy who's won the lotto twice. I mean, major lotto, like millions. And the first time, I don't know what happened the second time. That's when when he went it the second time, that's when I saw the story. But the first time he totally blew it. Unbelievable. but this is, where we live. I had a client once who, very interestingly, had won the New York State Lotto. And he was, not a humongous amount of money, but more money than any of us have. And I don't even know you. And he had a little house up by the lake. I think it's in Old Charlotte. And he had a little tiny lawn. There's this little tiny thing. And so what did he do with his money? Of course, he went out and he bought a riding lawnmower. And I know I'm pointing fingers at people, but anyone who wants to point at me can find equal idiotic things that have been done. But anyway, what do we do with this? We're in a situation where even the good things we're doing seem to turn around or are disappointing or are fraught with fear and all sorts of other things. In fact, the Buddhists say that there's this paradox of the 3 lifetimes. You do all sorts of generous things in a lifetime, your first lifetime. And because of the law of cause and effect, which only the Dharma teaches, because of the law of cause and effect, you're reborn in a very wonderful position. Like Steve Jobs or somebody with just all sorts of money coming to you just naturally. You didn't even do anything for it because the causes are a previous lifetime. So then what do you have? You have all this money, you have all this power, but you haven't done anything about looking into your mind. So people waste it. And because of their increased power, they have their negative virtues have more effect. And so the third lifetime, you're born even worse off. This is also expressed in the teaching of the 6 realms, the 6 realms of our realm of desire. It's saying that the sensual gods live in this, extremely beautiful situation where, they can communicate by just eyebrow gesture. Everything is just extremely blissful, pleasant, just wonderful. And they live a very long time because of their past positive karma. But eventually that runs out because, again, they're not really looking at the root of all of this, just living in the appearances. And when it's said that when they're about to die, they can see where they're going to be reborn. They have this enhanced mental power. It's said that the flower garlands they've been wearing, start to rot and fade, and their bodies start to smell. And all the other gods are totally grossed out about this and just exclude them. It's said that then they can see where they're going to be reborn. And of course, it's a lower state. It's said that the pain experienced by a god in the desire realm at that moment is the most intense pain in the universe. So even the good we do can paradoxically go off the rails. So what do? This is what Buddhism deals with. This is from Taitetsu Uno, who's passed away. He was a Japanese man who was a professor at, I think, Smith College. Buddhism speaks of 84,000 paths to supreme enlightenment. The number 84,000 symbolizes the countless ways that can lead us to the world of liberation, freedom, and peace. The significance of the number 84,000 is suggested in a terse poem written by Saiichi, an unlettered but perceptive practitioner of Pure Land Buddhism. In his words, 84,000 delusions, 84,000 lights, 84,000 joys abounding. As long as our thoughts, feelings, and intuitions come from a limited, finite, and karma-bound being, they are all delusions. It is not a matter of right or wrong, good or bad. This is our naked reality. They are delusions because they make us see the world from a deeply self-centered perspective, a fact that eludes our normal consciousness, our normal conscious awareness. Our myopic vision distorts reality. Hence, our thinking, doing, and saying are invariably flawed and defective, even though we may not admit it. Religiously speaking, delusions arise from the darkness of ignorance, avidya, producing insatiable greed, trishna, and manifesting as blind passions, kleshas. This is the cause of endless pain and suffering, dukkha. The 19th century thinker Friedrich Nietzsche raised such an understanding to a philosophical level and characterized it as perspectivism. From this vantage point, he undertook a sweeping critique of existing moral values, religious teachings, and philosophical concepts as being without any objective foundations. And this is Nietzsche. He says, the fundamental false observation is that I believe it is I who do something, suffer something, have a quality. And then Taitetsu Uno continues, based on this fundamental error, we construct a world with words and concepts infused with our emotions. Our life then becomes filled with polarities, such as good and bad, like and dislike, love and hate, black and white, mine and not mine, enlightened and not enlightened, ad infinitum. Such is the world of the 84,000's delusions. We are made to acknowledge this life of fabrication when our reality is illuminated by light. This light focuses on each of the 84,000 delusions, making them transparent and powerless. Light is symbolic of wisdom in Buddhism, and this light is none other than the Buddha of infinite light, Amitabha. Since the light is not harsh, cold, and distant, but soft, warm, and proximate, it is felt as a compassionate working. Thus, the same Buddha is also called the Buddha of infinite life, Amitayus. In East Asia, the two are unified into a single name, Amida. When we are made to see our delusions by virtue of compassionate light, we have then been touched by reality. No longer are we lost or confused, afraid or angry, insecure or fearful, not because these states have vanished, but because they are revealed to us more clearly, securely cradled within the great compassion of the Buddha. Each repetition of a mantra liberates us from our delusions, even as we remain karmically bound to them. This liberation, inconceivable, unexpected, and undeserved, is the cause for the endless celebration of this precious life. 84,000 joys abounding. And the teachings are incredible, truly incredible. You know, the different classifications of the teachings, but the, the Nyingma, the ancient tradition of Tibet, and we have many Nyingma teachings here. The Vajrakalaya practice that we do is from the Nyingma tradition, because way back when there was a Nyingma Dzogchen master who became the head of the Drikung Kagyu. So in our particular tradition, we have both Nyingma transmissions and Sarma, they're called the New School transitions. But regardless of that, not to get too far into the weeds, in the Nyingma, there's this classification of the path that human beings find themselves in, the path to Buddhahood. At the bottom level, you have, the hearers. These are self-liberation practices. The outer world is still totally real to them, but they're dissolving their ego, you might say. There's the next one up, the Pratyeka Buddhas. These are people that are said to practice like the rhinoceros alone in the forest by themselves. And they come to very deep awareness, self-liberation, but somehow they haven't developed the quality of compassion of liberating others too. And then the third level is the bodhisattva level. So when we read our little 37 bodhisattva practices, that's in that third level. It's the using ordinary understandings, but using our ordinary conceptual mind and emotions to go beyond them, you might say. And then you have 6 levels of Tantra, according to the Nyingma. Again, progressively more and more subtle. On the 3 lower levels. I think it's Upacharya and Yoga Tantra. We're practicing ourselves, realizing ourselves are part of our environment as being a pure land, as being a Buddha. And then we relate to it, but we create ourselves as a Buddha, and then we practice the mind of the Buddha. They're two different steps. But in the three higher tantras now, those two are combined. So it's pure from the beginninglessness. The foundation of it is pure, the practice is pure, the end result is pure. This is very hard for us to understand, conceptually, because it just seems so fantastic. But there's Maha Yoga practice at this level, which is the practice of, especially of the purification of form. And then the next one up is the Anu Yoga. That's the veins and channels, all the psychic veins and channels. That's the purification of this subtle form. And then finally, Ati Yoga or Dzogchen, which is the highest practice. Now it's said in Dzogchen, means the great completion. This highest of all practices, practicing as even sort of beyond being a Buddha. I mean, it's, again, inconceivable. But it said the highest practice there is this direct practice of Guru Yoga. It said that the mind of the Lama is complete, is totally enlightened. And the mind of the Chela, the student, is like a brass ring. And if there's this brass ring, then that mind of the guru can hook that brass ring. It's very direct. It's just tremendous faith. But in Buddhism, faith, it can't be blind faith. It can't be forced faith. Those really aren't faith. The word in Sanskrit that's closest to faith, as I understand it, is more like confidence. So what are the obstacles to the confidence? What are the obstacles to us realizing the fullness of our nature right now? The obstacles are called doubts. And how do we deal with these doubts? Well, one is by the actual practice of it. You may have a tennis coach that tells you to hold the racket in a certain way, and you have some doubt, like, maybe this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but I'm paying him money, so I better keep him happy right now. You've got all these doubts. But in the doing of it, you start to learn the wisdom of what he said. So it's like that with practice. You can have all sorts of doubts, and yet there's something that's drawn you to Buddha's path. And sometimes the outward expression of why we think we're doing something isn't really what's going on. There's something much deeper, much vaster, much more inconceivable, much more incredibly positive beyond our little egos that is going on there. And yet something that doesn't reject our individuality either. So these doubts, what do you do with doubts? Well, one thing is to look directly in them, but another thing is not to obsess about them. We give them more strength than they really deserve by making them into an obstacle. There are doubts that will dissolve after 20 years of practice. It's been there in your mind. You're not suppressing it, but you're just letting it rest there. It's like these practices are like, you've got a wall that somehow is obscuring your view of your true nature, or like in Rochester, clouds covering the sun. These practices are like lasers that are putting little holes. Every time you repeat that mantra, do that practice, put your mind towards bodhicitta. It's like a laser cutting little holes in that seemingly solid wall in front of you. And the holes are so small that you don't even see them. But it can happen that parts or all of the wall crumble eventually because it just doesn't have the reality that we've been giving it for lifetimes. So this is extremely important to just continue, just continue with the practice, not to let the doubts stop us. But another thing, of course, is our own understanding and investigations. It's really, really helpful. And this is what's so important about this path that we have, all the conventional teachings. Again, this great master, Nagarjuna, in ancient India, he taught on the two truths, the conventional truths, which are also called the deceptive truths. If you think about that, it's kind of mind-boggling. They're deceptive in an absolute sense. And then there are the absolute truths, all the higher teachings. Drikung Kagyu, among others, said that there's only one truth. The relative truths are the absolute truth too. I mean, again, you ponder these things deeply. But nonetheless, I think it's Nagarjuna has said that the relative truths, in a sense, the deceptive truths, are more important than the absolute truths, because it's by means of the relative that we come to the absolute, which is total freedom and Buddhahood. So what are these doubts? Well, there are all sorts of doubts. When people talk about Pure Lands, I don't want to hear anything about that. When they talk about lifetimes, that I'm even reborn, the whole teachings of rebirth, are naturally, there's a lot of natural skepticism about that. Our culture doesn't support these kinds of thinkings. We believe in rebirth, but only one, either one or none. If you're a materialist, there's no rebirth. If you're a Christian, there's one. So what can we do about this? Well, I came across something this week which was of great interest to me, and that is that this cutting scientific work that's going on, you might say going beyond science itself. Not going beyond science, it's wrong to say, but going beyond our current framework of basically Einstein and space-time. It's really amazing, because the work that they're doing, this is basically from a professor named Donald Hoffman, who's in California somewhere, but I think he studied mathematics at MIT. So he's considered to be an evolutionary psychologist. I don't know, I think he kind of made up a title because they don't really have a way to pigeonhole him. But nonetheless, the basic understanding of these people that are working on this is that evolution selects for what's called fitness. In other words, what enhances your survivability and what more likely allows you to pass on your genes to the next generation. So fitness. But the insight they've come to, these people, is that evolution is not a process whereby we are enhancing truth. Rather, we're just enhancing survivability. So the eyes with which that we have evolved in a sensual way, the eyes with which we see the world are partial. This is 100% Buddha Dharma. In fact, they're saying that we see the world through a fictive adaptation. He says it's like a keyboard on your computer. Your keyboard is this adaptation that allows you to do all sorts of things, but you have no knowledge of the pluses and minuses inside the guts of that computer, or the workings of the electronics underneath all of that, or the wires, or any of that. But it's very useful. It's fitness for us. It allows us to function in a good way for our bodies and minds. That's good. But we're not seeing the whole picture. Now, these people, the way they're thinking about this now is the vision that we have as human beings. He said, if I'm talking to you and basically I just see, a face, but that face is like a portal into a deeper understanding of you. So I believe I have consciousness. We're talking back and forth. You've got consciousness. I got consciousness. I see very little of you really, but there's still a portal there that I can learn more and more of your experiences, your history, your feelings, what's important, all of these things, to understand you, or to connect with you anyway as a human being in a very full way. Now, I have confidence that you have the same level of consciousness that I do. But if I look at a cat, I think, well, it's alive and I believe it has consciousness, but I don't quite know if I can really share with the cat. If I look at an ant, yes, I believe it's alive. I don't know if it has any consciousness at all. If I look at a virus, I don't even know. Is it alive? And does it have any kind of consciousness? I don't know. And if I look at a proton, I think, oh, it's dead. It's got no consciousness. These perceptions are factors of our limited, fictive adaptations. It's not that, for all we know, And actually, I believe the proton actually has consciousness. We just don't see it because in evolving, we didn't have to, that wasn't necessary for us to survive. So the limitations of our own level of understanding cause us to not understand the cat to the degree we do a human being, even though we're not understanding a human being completely ever, and certainly all the way down the line. So the fundamental teaching that these scientists are coming to is that our neurons do not create our consciousness, but rather our consciousness creates our neurons. This is totally tantric view. And further, it isn't space-time, this scientific world of appearances that we see, that have created matter. Rather, it's consciousness that has created the whole thing of space-time and everything that evolves from that. So this turns things upside down completely. But this is the Buddhist view also. And how powerful to even have confidence that this can be true, that we are the creators of our own universe. That's amazing. So no longer we can bitch and moan, but we can't blame others all the time. And of course, this is the source of the great compassion of the Buddhas. It comes out of wisdom, out of seeing things truly as it is. We can see in a limited way right now. You know, when things are going wrong, I can blame others, and rightly so. They're all kind of involved. We're all interconnected. You can always find someone who did something that is affecting you in some negative way. But the truth of the matter is that you can't control them anyway. So all you can do is yourself. Like Shantideva said, in this world that is covered with thorns and we are barefoot, what do? Well, you can either try to cover the entire world in leather so your Royal Highness yourself is able to walk around and not be bothered, or you can put on a pair of sandals. The whole modern view is trying to cover the world in leather. We're going to have one rules-based whatever it is that they're currently fighting about in Ukraine. We're going to have all these wonderful things happening, and we're just going to make everybody think the same way. Or you can change your attitude right now, and then your enemy even becomes your friend. It doesn't mean that you put your neck down and let him cut you in the neck, but you don't have to hate. You can run away. You can put him in jail. You can do all sorts of things, but you don't hate. The hating is not necessary. The hating is an expression of our ultimate frustration, our first noble truth. So the Dharma presents us with this path, this incredibly powerful and graduated path. And as far as doubts, you can go as far as you can with your brain. You don't have to stay away from learning, thinking that somehow this is going to challenge my faith in the Buddha. It's not that at all. It's the other way around. The scientists are turning around and seeing their own inherent limitations and seeing that there's more to it. This is truly, truly remarkable cutting edge stuff. But it's all expressed with all these terms, these symbols, these that we can do. And yet they're alive. I mean, I truly believe the proton has consciousness, but so too these visualized forms. We like to pretend that they're, just imagination or something. They're imaginary because our mind is so concrete that to see the truth, we have to imagine it. That's how far we are from the recognition of our own true nature. One monk once asked a Pure Land master, "Master, is Buddha Amitabha's Pure Land really real?" And he said, "More real than you, more real than this realm that we're in. We've created this whole universe of illusory stuff." One of the great things about the Dharma is its practicality. It recognizes, for instance, the moment of death and the after-death state and the rebirth as being actually more advantageous moments to liberate yourself. So in one way, you can think of all this practice that we do in this lifetime, it's all of benefit, but it's especially powerful because you're giving yourself tools and also positive inertia, momentum, that at that moment of death, you can recognize your true nature. because the body dissolves and the attachment inherent to the body is liberated in a sense. Not liberated in a sense that it's not there, but it's not sort of being pulled down by a gross conceptual thing like a body. So it's more powerful. The Tibetans say it's 19 times. Your mind is 19 times more powerful in death. You can, for instance, in all of these visualizations that we do and the detailed teachings of them, it tells you how to maintain your mind throughout the entire thing, the entire construction of the mandala, your arising as the deity, dissolution, all of these things. And it starts out with this yoga, of body awareness on the moment of death. If you can see your nature at that moment of death, that is the realization of the Dharmakaya. The limitlessness, the vast sky of your nature. But if you miss that, what happens? The arising start. It's said that we form a mental body, the Bardo body, that has all these kind of activities going on and experiences in the after death state. If you see into the nature of that, so if you're practicing Tara, if you're practicing Vajrakalaya, and they will appear to your mind, and you recognize that as your true nature, limitless love and compassion, then you're liberated there too. And that's attainment of the bliss bodies, the Sambhogakaya. These are the great, vast cumulus clouds in this vast expanse of our sky. And then finally, if you blow all of that, so to speak, the moment that you're about to be born, you can meditate on the seed syllable. This is the primal cause. And seeing the nature of your mind in that act of being born. So your karmic propensities are throwing you towards another rebirth. At that moment, you see the cause of all of this. That is the attainment of the Nirmanakaya, again, the deceptive body of the Buddha, which is the means by which all these suffering beings are helped. So the motivation is to liberate all, to lead all beings, which includes ourselves, to Buddhahood. But the method is what Buddhism supplies. And the greatness of the Dharma is that it recognizes its own provisional nature and its own greatness. Buddha said, don't confuse my teachings. My teachings are rather a finger pointing at the moon of Buddhahood, of enlightenment. Don't confuse my fingers with the moon. This is so important. Buddhism recognizes, in a sense, the deceptive nature of its own teachings, because it's going to something that's transcendent, we would say, in our ordinary dualistic language. And yet at the same time, this creates doubts. The scientific doubt is a huge one, for our age especially. So, at any rate, I was very happy to come across that this week, because it's very, confirming. Some people don't have a scientific doubt. There are those of you out there who have this natural, pure kind of, because of your past experience, a pure kind of confidence in either a teacher or the teachings or whatever. But as he says, 84,000 delusions. We all have a different bundle of all of them. All right. I think that's enough for me this morning. So first, any questions, and then we'll take a tea break, and then we're going to do the Achi, the protector practice. Yeah, Jack.
You mentioned briefly the Bardo body. Within